Welcome to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And thanks for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. We love it when you can join us, whether it's Fridays, 10 a.m., or whether it is on Sundays at noon, 99.3 FM. Thank you. We here at Truth for Our Time try to help you when the headlines hit home. We know that if God expects you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it. Lucas, thank you for being our producer today. And I see we have a light buzzing in, and I just sent an email to the speaker, and maybe it's him. But I also see we have John. John, are you on the phone with me? And maybe Lucas is in the middle of that, so I'll hold on for just a minute. But thank you for tuning in. For those of you who were with us last week, you know that we took time out at the end of the show to do a video that some of you had asked about. I had spoken several places throughout the state about the similarities with Winston Churchill and Donald J. Trump. The fact that both are considered bold, they're both considered brash, and they're both considered sometimes ill-behaved. And how Winston Churchill was exactly the man that God had for the battle at the time, World War II. Because of him, the war ended so much better for so many millions of people. And perhaps, though we're not in a world war right now, we are in a worldview, a war of worldviews. And Donald could be that man that God has appointed at the time. And I know that's so hard for so many of you. I go on to say in the video that, like Winston Churchill, he's bold enough to call out the enemy when others would not. He's brave enough to come up with a plan to defeat them when others want to appease them. It was Neville Chamberlain in World War II and in that era, and it's Hillary Clinton right now. She's already tried to appease those in the Middle East, and it's not working. And he's just still behaved enough to stick to his own instincts and do what he believes is right when others fail the courage to do so. So because of that, I think it fits. And so for those of you who are not there biblically, let me remind you, as I did in the video, Rahab had not yet repented when God used her to help the spies and for the Israelite children. So, and then when she did repent and surrender later, He put her in the lineage of Jesus Christ, which is a wonderful story, and how God doesn't care about our past, but He loves to give us a future right in the family of God when we do turn to Him. So just want you to remember that. That is now available. Charisma Magazine picked it up as well. Bob Eichleman, a writer who I've appreciated for quite some time, I'm honored that he found my work worthy, and he did an article on it. The video is in that link. Bob Eichleman with Charisma Magazine. And so I've also put that on the Facebook page for you, the Truth for Our Time Facebook page, so you can just scroll down until you see that link from Charisma Magazine as well. So is John on the phone with us?
Good morning. How are you?
I am well, thank you, sir. How are you?
Well, it's great to be on with the great Tamara Scott. You're almost nearly ubiquitous everywhere across the state and the country, getting out all the good news and your great takes on history. I admired what you said about Churchill, particularly because in this landscape we find ourselves in here and now, it seems like Mr. Trump is taking on literally the entire power structure of the entire world. And if you read William Manchester's book, Winston Churchill, The Alone Years, 1932 to 1940, truly, Churchill was the only statesman in Europe during the ascendancy of Hitler in the Third Reich, the only one crying out in the wilderness to beware of this man, that we need to engage him before he gets out of control. And everybody else was so worn down and war weary, they just did not want to hear it. But of course, when disaster happened, they turned to this very strong leader with his edges, as we all have. But, they say the Lord writes straight with crooked lines, and I think that has a lot of meaning sometimes.
Absolutely. And now to our listeners and our viewers, you can see, while I wanted to bring John onto this show, he just has such a great perspective and the ability to articulate no matter what the topic is. He has a background on it. John, for those of you who may not know, you are from Southwest Iowa. You are an attorney and a businessman, and we just thank you for your activity and all that you do, not to mention your own skill and talents. I could ask him to do an impersonation of several different folks, and he would zip right into it, and you would have a hard time on radio. telling me if it was John or someone else.
Tamara, when you do It's a Wonderful Life, your radio version, just have me come in to do Jimmy Stewart, and we'll see if I pass muster with your crew there.
Give us your merry line.
Well, now, look here, Tamara. I'll explain. Wonderful, who's pedals back in my pocket here.
For those of you who have not seen that movie, you've got to watch It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart and our own Iowa native, Donna Reed. It's a beautiful Christmas story. So thank you so much for reminding of us that, John. We've got so much to talk about here and things that are happening so quickly. We've just come through another week. We are now into our final 4 or 5 days with the election. What would you say to voters out there, John?
Well, Tamara, I am almost the age Lincoln was when he was assassinated, so wow. I'm getting longer in the tooth, and I believe, having spent time with Mr. Trump on 3 occasions, that there are those of us that do see our mortality, sooner rather than later. We're definitely playing on the back nine, to use a golf analogy, and I think even a man of great wealth in material things like Mr. Trump realizes that he wants to leave a legacy. This is a legacy election. I work in a division as a trust officer for a bank where I have to protect assets for children that are not yet even conceived. I say it's the best pro-life work a lawyer can do because we retain, property rights and wills and estates and trusts for people, and this election is about our future. And even Mr. Trump knows, with those wonderful children that he has, that if we lose the rule of law, due process, equal protection, our enshrined liberties as fleshed out in the Bill of Rights, but literally given to us by God himself, that no temporal man can take away. But these are all in great danger right now. Religious liberty, for instance, is in extreme danger right now. Second Amendment rights are in extreme danger. Even our rights to freely assemble, if you can't get your 501c3 approved, those get diminished. So this election is make or break, and it all focuses in on the Supreme Court. Right now, we basically have a 4-4 Supreme Court with the death of who I think is the greatest jurist of my lifetime, Antonin Scalia. We're at 4-4 right now. If liberal Hillary Clinton gets the court appointment, we will have a liberal Supreme Court that does not interpret the Constitution with original construction, but believes that the Constitution is a living, breathing document that can be, kind of transformed, even where you see penumbras in the Constitution. Those are shadows. And clearly that would horrify the founders of our country if they saw that this would be the judicial philosophy of the time. So this election is for all the marbles, and it's a legacy election for any of us that want to extend a legacy of this great last best hope on planet Earth, the United States of America, in terms of secular society. We've got to win this election.
You're absolutely correct, John, and there is so much at stake for all of us. I want to touch on a couple of things, and it's while you're talking, I could make notes and talk to you about several different aspects of that answer you just gave us. But let's just touch foreign policy. I'm getting, Facebook right now. I was amazed today, the first time that someone had actually said, I'm voting for Hillary because of foreign policy. John, I'm not a foreign policy major, but my goodness, if you can't look at facts and history and all the danger that she has placed this nation in, and I would just quickly say she's sold us out to the Russians, literally. 1/5 of our uranium rights right here in the U.S. now belong to Russia, not to mention the money she's taken from the European partners to the Clinton Foundation, the Russian reset, putting us in danger with the cyberspace security issues in that Silicon Valley type experiment that they started, the Saudi Arabias that she's taken millions from there as well, and not to mention Iran, the Iranian deal, but the now ransom money we know about that was on the runway. She has literally sold us out. And we can look to the Middle East and say, it's not better. In fact, it's worse with most of those countries than it was before she and Barack Obama became the Secretary of State and the President. And recently the Syria no-fly zone. Even HuffPost is saying folks are raising some concerns that that's not a good idea. What's your take on this? What would you say to people who are troubling with this?
Well, Tamara, this is not even a close call for me, because I'll just show a one pivot point example that shows how grave the situation is. Not only have we had our enemies scoff at us due to our perceived weakness, but our traditional allies are flinching because they have no confidence that we're going to be there and do the right thing. The Philippine Islands, our great ally for well over a century, now have done the unthinkable, and President Duterte there is now realigning away from the United States. This was just absolutely unthinkable a while ago. You look at the Middle East, we've seen the destabilization of three governments in the Middle East now, and what we see as a result of that is honestly nothing less than a genocide of rape, torture, and murder that is being perpetrated squarely against Christians in the Middle East. And this vacuum, nature abhors a vacuum, and when you destabilize governments and you allow in chaos, you have seen the worst influences there. And so the Middle East is far worse, and now we have angered Russia to the extent that, we've got fighters that are flying close to each other by airplane. We have the contemplation of a no-fly zone that could seriously turn into warfare almost overnight. We're talking about two military superpowers with nuclear weapons, and you just can't tempt fate like that. I think Mr. Trump, in his career, has been an extraordinarily good negotiator. He has done colossal multi-billion-dollar deals working with heads of state, working with captains of industry in these large countries, friend and foe, and again, not by tearing down and destroying in the battlefield, but by building some of the greatest real estate and some of the greatest properties in the world, employing tens of thousands of people to do it in the meantime. And if you have that kind of gravitas, you are able to work with people. Again, to use your Churchill analogy, nobody wanted to work with Joe Stalin, a very, very, very evil man from Russia, but still a much preferable war partner because we had to destroy and wanted to destroy and needed to destroy the Axis powers of Hitler, Mussolini, and the Japanese Imperial Army there. And so if you can negotiate well, like Churchill did at Potsdam, at Yalta, then you have to be able to bring this forward to time and place and say, well, a bellicose, belligerent foreign policy, such as we've seen the last 8 years, I mean, the irony is that Donald Trump is not running as a war hawk. He's not running as a neocon. He is going to, it's the old Reagan peace through strength, very limited use of American military, but let's get it built back up to where it needs to be. We've allowed for a great depletion of our strategic and tactical weaponry, and we've totally lost the prudence in how to use it, Tamara.
You're absolutely correct. We are down to World War I lows in one branch, World War II lows in a military branch. And so this administration has been so dangerous to everything that we know as Americans. I just don't think the public can really understand. Many of them are waking up, but many of the voting public and the non-voting public, frankly, are the television watchers, the game players, the social media kids who are in our colleges don't yet understand everything they've known, everything they find comfortable may not continue if we don't return to the foundational principles on which birthed those liberties they enjoy. Well, it didn't birth. Our liberties come from endowed by our Creator, but allowed the freedoms for them to enjoy them. And John, you touched on something that I want to talk about. We've got to go to break here, and I hope you can stay with us for the next segment.
Sure can, Tamara. You got it.
The fact that we do it peaceably. Huckabee used to say this. You can work with countries that will respect you when you treat them well. You see that with your neighbor. I'll touch on that when we come back. You're listening to Tamara Scott, Truth for Our Time, on 99.3 FM and Webcast One Live Studios. We thank you for listening in as we live God's Word in today's world. We'll be right back after these messages. John Anthony Jacob is my guest.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcastonelive.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rock and Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobsen Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And thanks for listening. You are listening to Truth for Our Time with Tamara Scott. My guest, John Anthony Jacobsen, is joining me today, and we're having a great discussion on the last closing days of this election. Your last best days to do to be a good steward. God-ordained government, and this is your opportunity to be a wise steward of what He's given you. And for those of you who talk about the uncertainties and you're just not sure what to do, and some are going to sit it out or vote for a third party, or listen, I go to the story of the talents. The servant who didn't know what to do, and so he did nothing. He buried it in the ground. And the story did not go well for that servant. I hear that you may have concerns and uncertainties with Donald Trump. You have certainties with Hillary Clinton, certain destruction and death for everything that we care about and hold dear. Our liberties, the foundational Bill of Rights that we appreciate. She has said she felt the Supreme Court was wrong on some of those decisions, the ones you and I cherish. So now we're down to justice, as John already pointed out. You need to be very, very careful about this. And we were just talking about the fact that Trump wants to work with our friends across the sea, and even those we may not have great relationships, perhaps repairing and working with countries that have not been friendly. Not that we're going to be foolish about it, but if you don't treat people as an enemy, they may not be as much of an enemy as you thought. And let me just take you to a story I was thinking about with Huckabee in 2008. He said, if you have that kid on the neighborhood block who is the best ball player. He hits a home run every time. If he's a jerk and he's arrogant about it, you dislike him. But if he's likable and humble and says, hey, I'll take you out and I'll help you, I'll give you a couple tips that I know, you're more likely going to get along with him. That could be where the United States is with many of our foreign partners, and that was what Huckabee was saying back in 2008. I think it has great wisdom for us to bear today. John, unless you want to have something to add on that, I want to hear your wisdom always, but I also then want to get to our talk about inheritance. I got to sit with John and some others one evening in Council Bluffs, and he brought up some points on the inheritance tax that I want our listeners to hear. So, John, can I go to the inheritance tax, or do you want to touch on that?
Well, sure. No, that's a great thing, because bear in mind this: when we have, let's say, our parents are passing away, or we are passing away, the money that we have left has already been taxed once. And for many of us, that's been taxed at over 50% by the time you add in the Social Security withholding, the employer match, or the self-employment tax on Social Security. That's 16% right there if you add that together. Most of us at the end of the year, if you are middle class, are in a 25% federal tax bracket. You can easily get up to an Iowa 8% bracket. Most of us don't get to save a whole lot, especially at 0% interest rates that's been manipulated to artificially low levels by the Federal Reserve. So we're paying 7% sales tax and throwing a couple percent for real estate taxes. And frankly, I'm at 58% tax on some of this money for middle class folks by the end of the year. So if you've already paid that once and you die, I think it's really obscene, actually, to want to charge a top rate of 65% on money that's not exempted. And that's what's in the Clinton plan, a top rate of 65%. Now, that's not an issue right now, because under the law today, if you've got a married couple, for instance, and use portability, $12 million is exempt from that federal estate tax. But let's say that it's just a widow or a widower who hasn't remarried, there's no portability. You're down to a $6 million exemption. Under the Clinton plan, for an individual that can't pass along portability to a spouse, that would be reduced to $3.5 million. Now, let's just say, for example... Now, I'm
going to ask you right there.
You bet.
Are you saying Clinton's plan will not allow you to pass this along to a spouse without taxation?
Well, here's the deal. If you do have a spouse, you can pass it on, but then you would only get a $7 million exemption. And here's where this comes in big. There are situations oftentimes in farm families where there's only one surviving parent left. And if there's been no portability election that's been allowed, for instance, let's say there's a widow farm wife right now. Right now she's protected. If she's got $6 million worth of land and equipment, she's exempt from federal estate tax. But again, I remind you, even having $5 million in a farm family is not that big of a deal, because you can have millions of dollars of equipment, liabilities, and loans. I mean, you drive down the road today and you've got $500,000 worth of farm machinery driving on one road there with one farmer. And if you've got 250 acres at $8,000 an acre that you want to give out to 5 kids, there's $5 million. Now, under today's laws, that would all be exempt from federal estate tax. But Mrs. Clinton's plan wants to drop that exemption for an individual down to $3.5 million. That means everything after that $3.5 million would be subject to tax. Therefore, all of a sudden, whereas today that last $1.5 million is protected to get up to the $5 million, now that $1.5 million is not protected, because your exempt limit goes from $5 million down to $3.5 million. Therefore, you're going to pay close to $1 million of estate tax toward that upper end rate of 65%, and you may basically be cash poor and just real estate rich, and that means that you can't give those 5 plots of land to those 5 kids. You're going to have to sell some of that just to pay the federal tax. Now, that's why marriages are good to endure, because if you're married and still have portability options with the spouse, or you transfer it to the spouse before the first spouse dies, you can get around that tax, which is why you want to plan while you're both alive to engage that portability early on. But the fact is, that would be very harmful to Iowa farm families if the Clinton plan comes into place. And I especially think it's kind of terrible when they've already had a whack at that apple and taxed maybe up to 60% of those very dollars the first time, and then come back and try to grab 65% more of what's left the second time seems a little bit overindulgent to me.
And so let's remind our listeners, folks, when you hear this talk and you hear the term millions, you think this is those rich people. John is explaining it very well. This is the farmer down the road. And it may be that the properties that are owned would have to be sold. The livelihood then is gone because of the taxation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, a couple of years ago when land was 10,000 an acre, anyone with 200 acres was a millionaire, according to the government. And it's if you add in machinery, equipment, the houses you live in, the farm buildings, any bins or any sheds, it's very easy to get up into those numbers. And, in Iowa, legacy farming is very important to us. And the other thing is, money is always more efficiently spent at the local level. As an attorney, there is a moral component of the theory of justice called the principle of subsidiarity. Subsidiarity says decisions are always best made at the most local, hands-on level. Therefore, it starts in the family, moves to the church, then the city, then the county, then the state, then the federal. This should not all be spent at the federal level because of the waste and the fraud and the abuse and, frankly, some of the immoral programs that the money is spent on. To the extent you can keep money in a community and drive up spending for goods and services, create jobs, increase purchases of property, that puts people to work at the farm implement dealerships, the electronic stores, the clothing stores. They hire more people. More tax revenue comes in to help these local communities, and people are actually paying less taxes. This is not a partisan thing. Ronald Reagan did that, but even Bill Clinton did that with the capital gains tax cut that was forced on him by Newt Gingrich, and Democrat John F. Kennedy used tax cuts to help revive the economy in 1962. This is Nobel Prize-winning economics, that the less you tax on the Laffer curve, the more income the government actually brings in, and yet families are able to make those decisions as best they can at the local level.
And again, that figure you gave me the other evening, 70% is what this would be taxed at, because you've paid your taxes while you were alive. You've already paid taxes on this money, and then it gets retaxed again. I want people to understand that as well. It's not only a death tax, it's a double taxation.
Yeah, it's really kind of it's based on envy a lot, and people are resentful of folks that have amassed money, but the way to amass that money is wonderful because it brings capital formation. If you were the greediest miser on the planet and all you wanted to do, if you were a curmudgeon who only wanted to build mansions, yachts, and automobiles for yourself, you would still be a one-man wrecking crew reviving the economy, because building mansions would hire electrical contractors, plumbers, drywallers, roofers. Buying cars would get people in Detroit still working in the assembly lines. Buying yachts would increase union wages in the shipyards. It would help the economy. And one of the ironies of life, Tamara, is that they tried to impose a luxury tax on yachts several years ago, and you know what happened? People quit buying yachts because the tax was too high, and those dockyard union workers were laid off and out of jobs because no one was buying the yachts. They
weren't buying them in America.
That's right.
They might have gone to another country to buy them because the rich could afford it, but everybody here in America was impacted in a negative way.
Yeah, and Trump understands that for there to be free trade, it does have to be fair trade. And again, that art of negotiation, that art of the deal, we desperately need someone at this juncture with the savvy to negotiate, because it is a transforming economy worldwide, and we do need to maintain our national sovereignty, particularly with respect to our infrastructure that we need for our defense and food industries.
And for those of you who are listening from a Christian standpoint, let me just read to you Ezekiel 46:18. The prince should not take from the people's inheritance, thrusting them out of their possession. He shall give his sons inheritance from his own possession, so that my people will not be scattered, anyone from his possession. And that's Ezekiel 46:18. And I'm not sure which translation this is. I'm on a website, Bible Hub, but I'm not sure which translation. Oh, New American Standard Bible. But the just is the prince, the government, should not be taking our inheritance, your inheritance, for whatever reason. In the Old Testament was to give to his people, but now it's to spend publicly. But it's not theirs to take. It is yours to take. You've earned it. You've already paid taxes on it, and it's just morally wrong to have it taxed. So,
Tamara, a nice point I would like to bring up is that it's hard to have that metanoia, that change of heart, if you're extracted from your money and forced to pay it to some monolithic entity zillions of miles away. It's hard to call that a moral act. If you are allowed to have your discretion to spend your money, that opens up your ability to use your free will to give moral assent to helping the poor in your community and to helping the widows and the orphans and the stranger in your midst. And to do all those things, morally it empowers you to walk that trek into feeding the hungry, giving drink to the thirsty, giving clothes to those who are naked. And it allows us at the local level to do our Christian duty with more control and moral authority, exercising our own conscience.
John, I thank you so much for your time today. Listeners and viewers, now you see exactly why I'd love to have him on the show. I was hopeful I could do it before the election. I'm so pleased it worked out today. Thank you for taking us just down the biblical path of morality and where we're headed as a future. Now, Senator Rick Santorum will be joining us this next segment. John, you're welcome to stay on the phone line if you wish, but we'll be back.
God bless you, Tamara, and you are a rock star. I want to tell you folks that Tamara gave a brilliant keynote in Council Bluffs a couple weeks ago, and not that Bill Northey isn't a great star in his own right, but I think, Tamara, you eclipsed everybody in the room that evening.
Thank you, John. We've got to go to break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Welcome back.
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Thanks for staying tuned. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time, helping you live God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. And here's why. Because if He expects us to live through it, He has directed us how to do it somewhere in His world, in His Word. No matter what the issue is, we can get teaching that will give us direction somewhere in His Word. And maybe you're not a believer. Maybe you're not familiar with the Word. Maybe you're not certain some days. Let me just give you this. Someone best said it to me one time, go where there is peace. The Lord will not lead you into strife. Go where there is peace. Now, that doesn't mean you don't go into strifeful situations, but you will have a peace about it. You'll have a peace from the Holy Spirit about it. So my thanks to John Anthony Jacobsen for joining us. You can see why I just enjoyed having him on so much. My next guest is Senator Rick Santorum, absolutely no stranger to Iowa. He could probably name most of the 99 counties. He's toured most of the 99 counties, probably been to more counties than some Iowans as well. Rick, Senator, thank you for joining me. I can see the line on, Senator. I can see there. Is this the senator?
I can hear you.
Very good. Thank you so much. I don't know if you could hear the introduction I gave you or not, but we
I
are.
did.
Oh,
I heard
excellent.
it.
Thank you so much for taking time out to join us today. Am I losing him again? Well, this is the beauty of live radio, isn't it, friends?
I can hear you.
Excellent.
I don't know why.
So we lose you intermittently. I'm just going to ask you, bless your heart. Well, first, John Anthony Jacobsen was my guest the first hour, half hour, and he wanted me to say hello to you. He's caucused for you, I think, on 2 different occasions, 2 different years. So he wanted to say hello, and I wanted to thank you for your speech that you gave to the Iowa delegates. You just had some very insightful words of wisdom for us. Thank you for your work.
Oh, absolutely. Look, this is a critical election. You know that, Tamara. And I know many people are struggling with it because you look at the unfavorability of both the candidates, and there's certainly a lot of concerns about the candidates and everything from their character to the policies that they've laid out, and whether they're going to follow through with those policies in some cases, or the fear that, in the case of Hillary Clinton, that they actually will follow through with the policies that they're articulating. I understand this. It's a very convoluted election, so I just sort of boil it down to this. I mean, you have 2 candidates that clearly have some very serious issues with respect to character, and have said things or done things, both of them, that are not lessons you want to instruct your children to behave in that way. That is troubling. But the bottom line is, you have to. Both of these candidates in that respect are flawed, and as I'm sure you say in your program, we all are to some degree, of course, flawed. But they have some big problems. But if you look at what the candidates will do, if you look at what they're outlining and what their track record is, Donald Trump is a change agent. Donald Trump is a leader who will make things happen, and is someone who will come to Washington D.C. and will shake things up. And the interesting thing about Trump is that he has, and I can tell you this in Pennsylvania. I spent the whole day there yesterday, running around the state. That he has a cross section of support that is in many cases as strong on the Democratic side as it is on the Republican side. There's a lot of Pennsylvania Democrats who are going to be voting for Donald Trump, and that's to me is his policies create the opportunity for a coalition to work together to get things done. Hillary Clinton is a doctrinaire progressive who is going to, continue the divisiveness in Washington, D.C., and is going to keep the status quo. So if you want status quo plus horrible divisiveness, Hillary Clinton's your candidate. If you want someone who actually has policies that could actually form alliances and actually get something done that are focused on helping ordinary Americans and shaking up the establishment and the status quo in Washington, then really Trump is your vehicle to do that.
Even Chris Matthews said something similar to that this week, and I was stunned. So you're absolutely correct. And I guess you've brought on the fact that folks may have concerns about both the candidates. I would say that one has criminal behavior in her background, and I don't know that we found criminal behavior in Donald Trump's. And if we look present day, we are a Bible-believing people on this radio station that believe in second chances, and where would any of us be without them? Look who Donald Trump has surrounded himself with versus Hillary Clinton's surroundings. Hers are many of them are under investigation, not just her. Many of them are under investigation as well. And you're absolutely right. Not just the status quo, but it's the continued corruption that many of us are ready to wash our hands of and move a different direction. And so, Rick, are you in Pennsylvania right now?
Actually, no, I'm not. But I'll be heading back up there again, and I can tell you that that I feel very comfortable that Donald Trump is going to surprise some people in Pennsylvania. Here's the reason I feel that way, is that unlike most other states, including the state of Iowa, we don't have early voting in the state of Pennsylvania. The only way you can vote early is through absentee ballots, and you have to have a reason to do so. And so the beauty of Pennsylvania, and by the way, in Pennsylvania, if you voted absentee, you can still show up at the polls on the day of the poll, and they will hand you your absentee ballot. You can tear it up and vote differently. So in Pennsylvania, you actually get a view of the election on Election Day. That's who votes. And that to me is encouraging, because I think Trump has changed the last 2 weeks. The whole dynamic of this race has changed, and I think Trump has the momentum going into Tuesday. And the fact that Pennsylvania decides on Election Day is the reason I believe he actually is going to win that state. And obviously, as most people would say, if he wins Pennsylvania, there's a very high chance he's going to win this election.
And it's not just that we're wanting the Republican versus the Democrat, but there are very real changes, very real issues facing this nation. And with Hillary, I don't know our future. It is not just political for me. It's very concerning for me militarily, with immigration here in our own borders. With Trump, I believe that at least we have some return to reason, and that our sovereignty and our security will be paramount.
Oh, on the issue of national security, I mean, Hillary Clinton loves to tout her experience, but her experience is really not a very good experience. I mean, if you look at the situation in Iran, look at the fact that we started on this nuclear deal under her leadership. We had in Iran the revolution in Iran that took place that was going to topple the regime. And Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama stood down and did nothing to support those protesters. We wouldn't even be dealing with a potential nuclear Iran had Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama did what they did when it came to Egypt, when it came to Libya, a whole bunch of other places where we injected ourselves to overthrow dictatorships. We injected ourselves in the case of Egypt with a dictatorship that was friendly to us. And here they have a dictatorship in Iran, and they did nothing, and they were the number one enemy of the United States and have been for a long, long time. So you see bad experiences. Benghazi, and we've talked about that over and over. The bottom line of Benghazi is this: there was only one person in the chain of command. This was a State Department mission. There was only one person in the chain of command that could have had our military invade, because that's what it would have had. We would have been outside the country. We'd be coming in with military force. There's no general sitting there on the ground can call for troops from outside of the country to come in to a foreign country. It takes the Secretary of State or the President. Those are the only two that could have responded, and she was asleep at the switch. She did nothing, and let our ambassador and others die. So this is the kind of bad experience that we don't want, that jeopardizes our national security as a President of the United States.
And Rick, we've got to go to break here shortly. Is there a chance you can stay on with us?
Maybe, for a couple more minutes.
For a couple more minutes.
I've got a call that I got to do shortly.
Okay. When we come back, I want to touch on the Iowa judges, and I know you have been so instrumental in that in the past couple of elections. So we will be right back after these messages with our friend Senator Rick Santorum. Stay tuned. More from Truth for Our Time and 99.3 FM and Webcast One Live. Stay tuned.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobsen Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcastonelive.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common, everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And thanks for staying tuned. You're listening to Tamara Scott with Truth for Our Time. I'm going to go right back to Senator Santorum. I just wanted to give you a chance to speak. We have the 3 remaining Iowa Supreme Court justices that were the ones on the bench who unanimously forced same-sex marriage on Iowans. So I want to give you a chance to talk.
This is one of the great threats to our democracy. We established a republic so the people would have a say in the future of our country. One of the things that we didn't want is dictatorship, and dictatorship can come in different forms. It can come obviously from a strong person who's trying to, who authoritarianly runs the country, but it also can come from an oligarchy, which is a group of people who decide, what the law of the land is and how people have to behave. And that's where we are with judges. The judges were never intended to be the final say on matters of public policy. They were the ones who were the referees. They aren't the quarterback. They're not the defensive end. They're not out there playing in the field in the football game. They're the ones refereeing this game that is our republic. And they have taken upon themselves to say, no, we're the elites. We know best, and we're going to tell you what the laws of the land are going to be. And this has to be rejected. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. I don't care if you're for same-sex marriage or against it. What you can't be for is taking the decisions of the American public out of the hands of the public and out of the hands of the process by which those decisions are made. And we don't have a pure democracy, and I'm not for one. But we have a republic, which means we elect people, and they are held accountable, and there's a process, and it's a difficult one to actually change the law in this country. We can't just have 4 people or 5 people decide we know best and fundamentally change the entire cultural landscape of our country. This is where Iowans, good common sense Iowans, who I know and love very much, hopefully will come out and say we have enough of this. We need to return to a republic, not an oligarchy run by judges.
Senator Rick Santorum, thank you so much for taking time out for us today.
My pleasure, Tamara. Thank you.
Appreciate everything you are doing. Continue your good work, and God bless you as you go.
God bless you and this country. Bye-bye now.
Thanks. Folks, are we blessed in Iowa or not? I tell you, this past week has been difficult for us as we've had 2 officers shot here in the Des Moines area, and we are coming together like never before. On my drive to the studio today was the corner where one of the officers lost their life without notice, sitting in their car with no warning, no opportunity to defend themselves. And there's a makeshift memorial there. I've been to the police station in Urbandale. There's the memorial there that is just breathtaking, and I'm headed to the one in Polk County and Polk to Des Moines to see that one as well. My point is, we in Iowa come together like never before. We are a good, solid people. Our values are incredible, and this is why the First in the Nation and the process through Iowa is so vital to our nation. We offer. We don't fly by the seat of our pants on the trends and the fads that come from the East Coast or the West Coast. We are solid people who are reasonable and need good foundations before we move. We don't just make decisions at the whim. In this state, last week, in 24 hours, I had the opportunity to be with 3 U.S. senators, our own U.S. Senator Grassley, U.S. Senator Jeff Sessions, and U.S. Senator John Thune. And then in that same 24 hours, 3 heroes: Mark Luttrell, the Navy SEAL survivor, the Benghazi Tantos, who tells a story so emotionally about what happened in Benghazi, and a World War II survivor as well, and told the story of him being a prisoner of camp. We have such opportunity in this state, and I'm asking you to be so careful with your vote, with your emotions. Don't get swept up. The mainstream media that comes out of the East Coast and the West Coast and the high-towered buildings in the metropolis areas are not the feet on the ground, and they may not have the wisdom and the foundations that you have. And I would ask you, even listening to me, put your faith in the Word of God. The Bible tells you to test all things, be on your knees, praying for direction. But the justices, as Senator Santorum brought up, it's not just whether you like a decision or don't like a decision. And let me give you a little bit of history here. I'm watching the clock, and I think I have time to do this. In Iowa, in 2008, I believe it was in September, John Carlson wrote an article in the Des Moines Register about a sexual, I won't say predator, but someone who was arrested for sexual assault. His name was Isaac, and he had been found guilty on several different convictions. The case went to the Supreme Court, where they overturned his convictions. And in the article, John Carlson writes, the Supreme Court said under Iowa code you had to have an intended victim or a named specific victim. And in this particular case, there were multiple, but there wasn't one named, one specific. So the court wrote, under Iowa code, current Iowa code, this is the only option we have. But if the legislature would like to change this code, here is model legislation how which they may do so. And the next year, Senator McKinley and myself and others changed the code. I'm not a legislator. I just brought it to Senator McKinley's attention. He was attentive, and they worked at changing the code to address the situation. My point being, there was your precedent from the bench itself that they knew they do not have the ability to change law. Many people will tell you it's the court's responsibility to interpret law. I'm going to tell you it's their responsibility to uphold law. It's not like the legislature here or in the Congress make a law and then they go, hey, what did that turn out to be? That's not the way it should be. That's costly for every taxpayer who then has to litigate to find out what the law means. They are to uphold the law, meaning when the speed limit is set, the bench can find you guilty or not guilty of speeding. But they don't get to say, we don't like that speed limit on that street. It's not low enough anyway. We're going to change it. It's now 35. They don't change the speed limit. They only decide guilty or non-guilty. In this case, this particular case, it's a very emotionally high-charged, sensitive issue because of the fact that it was on same-sex marriage. But remove that. Maybe it's on your gun rights. And they say, oh, this person misused their gun. Therefore, now nobody can have guns anymore. Or nobody can use handguns or keep them in their car. Because maybe it was hypothetical, a crime of passion, and if this person would have had easy access to a gun, they wouldn't have been able to perpetrate a crime. You see what I'm saying? They don't go in and change the law. They don't get that option. Well, here, in this decision they did, that day they said, all of a sudden we're going to undo DOMA, Defense of Marriage, which was signed into Iowa Code by Governor Vilsack, a Democrat, and the legislature, which is still on the books, to my understanding, because they don't have the ability to go in and change it. So now you have no reconciliation with a court decision that was outside Iowa Code. What happened then was your Attorney General, Miller, outstepped himself and forced 99 county recorders to break their oath of office and not uphold the Iowa Constitution or Code and the U.S. Constitution, and they allowed same-sex marriage licenses to take place. They don't have that authority. They don't have that power. And we allowed it. So we now have same-sex marriage in this state, but it is not legal. It is just allowed. A huge difference. So turn your ballot over and vote no on the Supreme Court justices. Now, there are great justices out there. We have a good judicial system, and there are many good judges in Iowa. But if the Bar Association refuses to police itself, as many other medical professions do, then we're going to have to step in. And this retention vote is your only say. You will not get a vote for another 8 years. So this is your only opportunity to have a say and a voice. It doesn't politicize the system. It just allows you to have that voice. Vote no on the judges. Vote Trump for your future. Depend on God always. Be encouraged and never be complacent.